across the planet. Ours is a simple faith. Life is a short embrace. Heaven is in this place every day. Hope is the ground we till. Make each day what you will. Thankful for dreams fulfilled every day. There is no hell to fear, no judgment day drawing near. Trust that inner voice you hear every day. Life's not a goal or a race. It's about heart and faith and living a life of grace every day. Ours is a simple faith. Life is a short embrace. Heaven is in this place every day. Hope is the ground we till. Make each day what you will. Thankful for dreams fulfilled every day. Is an open hand, making an honest stand, rooted here in the land every day, living the mystery, seeking the harmony here between you and me every day. Ours is a simple faith. Life is a short embrace. Heaven is in this place every day. Hope is the ground we till. Make each day what you will. Thankful for dreams fulfilled every day. Ours is a simple. Life is a short embrace. Heaven is in this place every day. Hope is the ground we till. Make each day what you will. Thankful for dreams fulfilled every day. Every day. Thankful for dreams fulfilled every day. It's a simple faith. Very short embrace. Heaven is in this place every day, every day, every day, every day. Good morning, folks. So glad you are here with us and that we have Mazin Qumsiyeh today. This is just so wonderful to hear him again. We are on the tail end of just walking on air from the presentation by Lawrence Wilkerson on Friday night. That was just a wonderful encounter. We just enjoyed not only his message, but his person, just a sweet man that we hope we will have again. Actually, we will have again on July 4th as part of the monthly John F. Kennedy commemorative speech event that we celebrate once a month, and it's an amazing thing. We have Dennis Kucinich coming up. I want to be as short as I can so we can give Mazen the floor for as much time as he wants or needs. But it is a full reading of upcoming events here, and I start with next Saturday, which is the Muslims for Progressive Values Eid Iftar. That they meet here regularly, and they're having a celebration on Saturday the 23rd. Sunday the 24th, we have another just remarkable speaker. His name is Professor Gerald Horn, and he joins us from University of Texas. In that afternoon of March 24th, we have a celebration of Salvadorans and a commemoration of the anniversary of the assassination of Monsignor Romero. This will be a pupusa palusa is what we call it. I don't know if you know what pupusas are, but we have them a lot here. It's a El Salvador delicacy brought to us by Luis Guzman, our Salvadoran cook and janitor at Community Church. So that's on March 24th in the afternoon. Then the calendar says I have a colonoscopy no, I won't say that one. March 29th, I'll go on to David Rovics. He's a people's troubadour that travels throughout the United States and Europe constantly and writes. He has an entire concert of songs written about what's going on in Gaza right now, and his tour is called. The concerts are called Notes from a Holocaust. David Rovics, don't miss it. He'll be here in person as well as online. March 31st, Audrey Schulman, the director of HEAT, H-E-E-T, the Boston-based organization that has done miracles in promoting what's called microgrids of geothermal energy on streets of the city of Boston and other places. In Worcester, Massachusetts has an experimental microgrid that ties together the heating and air conditioning for a whole street of houses. Audrey Schulman, really remarkable climate activist, and who has done something just remarkable with her work. That afternoon, March 31st, is our annual fiscal meeting. We usually have it in February, but we were just so jammed with stuff that we forgot. And so we're having it in March instead, March 31st. Now, the next one, I'm really hoping you will attend. It's in person only. We won't broadcast this. It's our annual high holiday, highest of high holiday, April Fool's Day. Us, we're fools. We're a ship of fools for justice, fools for God, fools for ourselves and each other. Jimmy Tingle will be our guest that night, and it's completely a benefit for Community Church of Boston in our moment of need, what with our first floor restaurant that's been vacant for several months. We have good news that we're hoping to ink a deal with a new restaurant down there, and it's very positive. But in the meantime, we're in tough shape. Jimmy Tingle. I will also mention that night's dinner is in honor of Dick Kashishin, who was our clerk for over 20 years. The board's clerk and secretary. Dick will be with us. He's 89 years old, and we will honor him on that same night, Monday, April 1st. Jimmy Tingle honoring Dick Kashishin. Tuesday, April 2nd, we have a classical music a cappella vocal ensemble. They're called Kulomba, and there are 5 voices, and they are magnificent. So that's Tuesday, April 2nd. Saturday, April 6th, we have Joni Mitchell Night. It's an assemblage of Berkeley students and alumni, as well as some community church folks like yours truly, and John Felton, who's in the audience tonight, and Brian Cartwright. We'll all contribute a Joni Mitchell song, and it's all a benefit for Doctors Without Borders Gaza Relief. April 6th, Joni Mitchell Night. April 7th, Father Charles Gallagher from Boston College, professor there, who wrote an amazing book that's called The Nazis of Copley Square. If you don't know, we're located in Copley Square. And it's about 1940, and it's about the the huge Nazi movement in the United States between the wars, especially here in Boston. And our church figures into this story because we were on the forefront of calling out the Christian nationalism movement that was growing right here in our own Boston. Father Charles Gallagher. Then Wednesday, April 10th, get ready for this. Dennis Kucinich will join us virtually on the monthly John F. Kennedy commemoration night. I'll also mention that every second Saturday of the month we have a peña. A peña is a Latin American style open mic. You don't have to sing in Spanish or be from Latin America. You can come and put in your 2 cents, be on your soapbox, read your poem, sing your song, or make your statement, and enjoy delicious food every second Saturday of the month. April 14th, we have amazing gift. Her name is Pashtana Durrani. She's from Afghanistan. She is receiving a master's at Wellesley, and she is an advocate for Afghan girls' education, which, as you know, is not an easy task at this very moment. I'll also mention the other regular things that happen in this auditorium. The Fifth Ward Democrats meet here every second Tuesday. And of course, Muslims for Public Value. Extinction Rebellion has frequent meetings here in this auditorium. So that's just a little look at what's coming up at Community Church. And that's just 1 month. So I hope you get a sense of what a beehive of activity, good trouble we're getting into using this space. I'm going to sing one more song, and then we're going to invite Mazen right up. I got a beautiful phone call yesterday from Tom Pacheco. Tom Pacheco joined us in October of 2019 to sing on Indigenous Peoples Day. He is one half Lakota and the other half Portuguese from New Bedford, Massachusetts. And it was my discovery of this magnificent songwriter and a couple thousand songs that he's written, many beautiful ones, and I choose this one because of the content of today's program. Tom Pacheco had been out of commission for 2 years. He was in different hospitals and rehabs, having shattered one of his hips and other health issues, and he's back home, and I had sent him a little care package, and he immediately called me up. And it was just so great to hear from him, and I send this out to you, Tom, for writing this song, which is about right now. The song is called Homeland. Have you ever been homeless? Have you ever been lost? And you know where your home is, but you can't get across. Do you dream of the orange groves where your grandfathers lived? Do you suffer such sorrow that it's hard to forgive? Cry, cry, cry as the refugees wait. Shut your eyes to the sorrow, shut your ears to their fate. Try, 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 they just won't go away. May the Palestine people have a homeland someday. Like ashes they scattered in the wings of the earth, with all memory shattered, with all feelings of worth, living life like gypsies, on the road, on the run, with the heels of your history close so far as the sun. Cry, cry, cry as the refugees wait. Shut your eyes to the sorrow, shut your ears to their fate. Try, 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 they just won't go away. May the Palestine people have a homeland someday. People of culture, of genius and heart, mathematics and science, and grace, grace in the arts, caught between the wall and the sea, and the bombing assaults, and the settlements growing, till there's no land at all. Cry, 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 as the refugees wait. Shut your eyes to the sorrow, shut your ears to their fate. Try, 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 they just won't go away. May the Palestine people have their homeland someday. May the Palestine people have their homeland someday. Someday, someday, someday. Thank you. Song by Tom Pacheco of Woodstock, New York. We send this out to you, Tom, and we wish you the best of final recuperation. We know that you are just starting to walk again, back on your feet with a cane, can walk out to the mailbox and back. That's a step forward towards full recovery and towards writing more songs for us. Tom Pacheco. After all those announcements I just made, I just want to come back to our present moment, where we are in the company of someone who, just like Larry Wilkerson 2 nights ago, I make my own category of visionary and prophetic speaker. Not pathetic, prophetic. I said that too uncarefully. Prophet is what I say. Mazen has been with us a number of times, and Mazen and Jesse most recently about 1.5 years ago. And before that, the one that I love is that there was a trip that was planned. It was kind of in late COVID that had to be canceled, but Mazen still wanted to make the date with us. And it was a 7 p.m. event here, and so he and Jesse got up at 2 in the morning. No problem. We'll give the talk. So that's just a little example of dedication and fastidiousness. Mazen is the director of the Palestine Museum of Natural History, scientist and public speaker extraordinaire. Mazen, thank you so much for joining us again. And we want to say that the proceeds of today's offering are headed in the direction of the Palestine Museum of Natural History. We're going to give you the information to log in, as well as an address to send checks through the Bethlehem University. Thank you, Mazen.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for coming. I know there's been a lot of talks and a lot of events and a lot of demonstrations, and in San Francisco and Boston and New York and Washington, D.C., everywhere around the world. So people are very busy. I hope you can see my screen here. I'm not going to give a formal presentation, but I do want to skip through some slides and then say a few words about what I think is happening globally and why things are heating up soon, and that this genocide, I'll tell you the bottom line. The bottom line is if this genocide does not stop very, very soon, we will be down the road of a global war, a regional war, that leads to global war, and then there will be genocides around the world. This is my bottom line, basically. But that we can make a difference in stopping it, and so this is my message to you, and I hope I'll bring the arguments forward to explain to you why I think so. Now, the problem here is very clear to you all from previous talks you've heard from other people, not just me, that there was an attempt to take a country that's multi-ethnic, multicultural, multi-religious, and even multilingual country and make it a Jewish state. This attempt to transform Palestine into a racist Jewish state called Israel took decades in the making and took support of a lot of people. And I'm talking about support of Western governments, which is still there, support of some Arab governments, which are still there, support of mass media that is controlled by the Zionist lobbies, that is still there, that makes it possible to do this. And I could go on, but my point here is not a history lesson. As you know, this displacement settler colonialism is not unique to Palestine. It happened before, for example, in the US, when it was created and the Native Americans were left in reservations. This settler colonialism is, however, pretty aggressive, and it is happening in the 20th century and 21st century when most settler colonialisms were not there. Before October 7 and what transpired afterwards, over 100,000 Palestinians have been killed. For example, in 2021, 90 children, 2022, more than 120 children, 2023 to 7 October, 39 children, and so on. This system that existed before, the genocide that existed before, is now kind of ignored and passed over. And this is kind of sad situation. But for example, yesterday we commemorated Rachel Corrie's anniversary of killing of Rachel Corrie, a friend of ours, who was killed by a bulldozer in Rafah. And you hear now a lot about Rafah. Rachel Corrie was bulldozed to death in Rafah. Many people were killed in Rafah in 2003, 2004, and beyond. This is over 20 years ago. So, and Rachel Corrie and other foreigners were then also killed, which is unusual for Israel not to pay attention to the fact that they are foreigners. At the time I'm talking about. Now they don't care. They kill foreigners with no. I mean, there are many American citizens who happen to be Palestinians who were living in Gaza, and they are either killed or injured. The situation, we can look at it from a perspective of history as not very unique, if you want. but there's some uniqueness to this genocide. You know, sorry. This is the Gaza Strip, by the way, 2.3, 2.4 million people. It's from which the word Gauz comes from, is Gaza. And the Gaza Strip is populated mostly with children. Over half the population is children. The idea of what to do with the Gaza Strip started to develop long before even 1967 war. But in 1967, Israel was faced with this population that is living in the Gaza Strip. 2/3 of it are refugees or displaced people that Israel occupied and even built settlements in the Gaza Strip. You know, from the beginning, from 1948 onward, the biggest obstacle to achieving the Zionist project, of course, of colonizing Palestine, making it a Jewish state, has been the Palestinians. So what to do with the Palestinians? And, you know, Raphael Litan, for example, said, well, when we settle the land, these cockroaches will run around like drugged cockroaches in the bottom. Well, this was the mild version of the plan for Palestine. After this, developed stronger ideas, right-wing government ideas of genocide and of ethnic cleansing, even more than what was done in 1948. Today, by the way, 15 million Palestinians live in the world. 8 million of us are refugees or displaced people. So it is no longer the plan of the Israeli Zionist project to contain the remaining Palestinians in enclaves and leave them there, enclaves like Bethlehem, Nablus, Gaza Strip, etc. The ideas developed very early on in the 1980s and certainly in the 1990s among Likud and other right-wing parties in Israel, that we cannot manage this population. The left-wing Zionist parties, of course, like Labour and Rabin and Peres, thought they could do like what South Africa did under apartheid, keeping Bantustans, ghettos for the Palestinians. So Rabin and Peres' plan, which was implemented via the Oslo Accords, at least for a few years, was to squeeze the Palestinians into those people, warehouses, unwanted, and have them scurry around like drugged cockroaches in the bottle, as Raphael Eitan said. Well, things changed dramatically in the late 1980s and early 1990s. What changed? Well, the Russian Empire, Soviet Empire, collapsed basically in 1989, I believe. And so it was not possible to play these chess games with two empires duking it out on other people's expenses, the American Empire and the Soviet Empire. The second thing that happened is as the Soviet Empire collapsed, there was a lot of Russian Jews living in Russia who suddenly found that the doors were open for them to do two things. One is, sorry, I have a cold and it's kind of tough, but so I'll try to make my talk shorter. But two things happened. One is these Russian Jews who were Zionists by sympathies to the Israeli project, they suddenly had access to a lot of resources, you know, and many of them developed to become billionaires, a Russian class of oligarchs And of course, Israel welcomed them, having destroyed the banking system in Switzerland. Israeli banking systems were open to the Russian mafia and those Russians and the state, not just within Russia itself, but all the countries that were previously part of the Soviet Union, like Ukraine and Moldova and others, suddenly had the ability to have people become very wealthy, migrate to Israel, deposit their money in Israeli banks, avoid taxation, and so that was an important component of a power of a right-wing fascist mafia that grew in Israel in the 1990s. And their poster boy was none other than Netanyahu himself, Benjamin Netanyahu, whose family is Polish. His father changed the name of the family from Malinowski or something to Netanyahu to sound more Israeli or more Jewish. But Netanyahu's rise to power in the 1990s was associated also with ties to the Russian mafia and the Russian oligarchs, and that's where they got most of their money. And of course, they got money. Likud also got hundreds of millions of dollars from people like Edelson, an American billionaire, made a lot of his money from casinos that he ran in Las Vegas and around the world. So they donated lots of money to the right-wing Likud party. The more left-wing Zionists like Rabin and Peres were left shortchanged, if you want. They had people like Saban, Haim Saban, an American very rich guy, also I think is also like a multi-billionaire, who donated to the Labour Party in Israel in the 1990s. But as the Likud gained more and more power in the 1990s and their rhetoric became more and more militant, causing actually one person to follow on their recommendations and assassinate Yitzhak Rabin, the political rival for Netanyahu. And this actually, instead of the government punishing the Likudniks, if you want, the government actually turned Likudnik, and Rabin's successor, Shimon Peres, actually made right-wing decisions and denied Palestinians access to holy sites and increased settlement activities, all of this stuff, to try and placate the right wing, if you want, instead of punishing them for killing his partner. And this all happened in the mid-1990s. And when elections came, this didn't help him, didn't help Peres or his party. So the Likud won a landslide, basically victory, was able to form a government, a very right-wing government, and proceed to increase settlement activities in the West Bank. So who are these people, the Likud and the right wing in Israel, and what's their plans? And I think it's important to understand the context of what's happening in Gaza today and in the West Bank also, where I live, where I speak to you from Bethlehem, to understand the context. This is the Prime Minister Netanyahu, well before October 7, 2023, explaining about Israel and its plans. He says Israel is an economic superpower, Israel is a military superpower, Israel can do what it wants, and it's already normalizing. He said we control America, and Israel will normalize with these Arab countries like United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, etc. And the idea that he presented is that we will create, Israel will create an alternative path from Asia to Europe that bypasses the new Silk Road, the Belt and Road Initiative that China built from Asia to Europe and spent some $6 trillion on it. He says we don't have to spend that much, but we do not have a shortage of money. There's, Israel is one of the richest countries on earth and controls much of the wealth of the Middle East, be it Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, all of this stuff. So with or without normalization, the idea was to use this money from Saudi Arabia, from United Arab Emirates, that most of them are deposited in banks affiliated with the Zionists, and whether in the United States and New York or whether it's in Tel Aviv. And this money will build the railroad and other tracks across the Middle East that connects Asia with Europe. Not only that, I mean, Gaza has something along the coasts of Gaza, gas fields that contain hundreds of trillions, basically, of cubic feet of natural gas. And these gas fields are estimated to be worth some $200 billion with a B, $200,000 million. Obviously, Israel wants these gas fields, and they've already began using them even before this October war, so to speak, which is not a war, really, is more of a genocide of the people of Gaza. If you look on the map on the right, on the left, the fishing area that Gaza people are allowed is shown in bluish color. It's shown where here's the fishing area that's allowed. And why is this fishing area that's allowed there like that? Is not to be close to the Gaza Marine or other fishing areas. The map on the right shows the network of gas pipelines that are now already in the Mediterranean. You can add to them a new gas pipeline from Marine B and from the Gaza gas fields to Europe, which is now replacing Russian gas, if you want. To go back to the issue of Russia, by the way, because also most people don't understand what's going on in Russia. There's elections going on in Russia now, and Putin is likely to win with a landslide, probably. There are 3 other candidates, including communist person. But anyways, Russia recovered from the collapse of the Soviet Union and tried to stop the US expanding NATO into, in fact, the collapse of the Soviet Union, reunification of Germany were supposed to be conditional on NATO not expanding. But of course, NATO expanded to several countries nearby. And they were going to expand into Ukraine, which is like the largest country in Eastern Europe that borders Russia, and also has like 25% of its population are Russian-speaking people. So anyway, Russia in the around 2004, 2005 and beyond, recovered from this collapse of the Soviet Union and started to build its economy and its relationship with countries like China and other countries, and also Ukraine was a very close ally of Russia. Then the US, of course, intervened and toppled the pro-Russian president of Ukraine and installed this, excuse me, let me just turn off. So The situation there is related in some sense because Russian political elites, including Putin and others, were very unhappy about Israeli close ties with Washington and its being servient to the US, and also that the oligarchs had run off from Russia with billions of Russian, most of the natural resources in Russia were destroyed by these oligarchs who got them under great deals with the old, Gorbachev and the earlier government. So they would buy a mine, for example, for a few $1,000s, and then, of course, destroy its situation and sell its natural resources and not employ Russians in there. Now, these people that are, again, like Netanyahu, like Yoav Gallant, many of these Israeli elites who are funded and supported by a lot of Russian oligarchs and American oligarchs and others, were genocidal in terms of their thoughts about the Palestinians. And you've seen these quotes, for example, from some of these people, that they will destroy, they will annihilate, they will wipe out Gaza. Itzhak Herzog, for example, said, there are no civilians in Gaza, and they should kill everybody. The Israeli defense minister said, deny them food, water, electricity. We're denying them everything because we're dealing with human animals, not humans. And this is obviously got translated onto ground actions like you see here. And the killings that kept increasing. Now it's over 31,000. And then the ethnic cleansing, moving the population south towards Rafah. And, what Israel was planning, and this was clear from their own statements and their own rhetoric before October 7, by the way, and after October 7, is that they wanted to destroy Gaza and clean it out, not keep it as an enclave like what Rabin and Peres would have wanted, enclave for the Palestinians or reservation for the Palestinians, but actually genocide and ethnic cleansing. You give them a choice, either be killed or move to the Sinai. This was the plan. It was very well articulated and very well presented to the Israeli war cabinet also, and even before to the Israeli government. Now, these plans could have been executed within a few weeks or 2 or 3 weeks. We are now in the 6th month of this. Except for one thing, the reason they didn't succeed in executing them within a few weeks is because the Palestinian resistance was very, very strong, stronger than even the Israeli military and the American CIA and everybody had predicted. Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Popular Front for Liberation of Palestine, were basically targeting Israeli tanks and picking them like ducks in a row, they are just shooting them. Over 1,100, vehicles, tanks, most of them tanks, some are armored personnel carriers and bulldozers, were targeting with these, well-structured anti-tank missiles called Yasin 105, which really amazing that for a cost of one of these things of a couple of $100 or $100, you're destroying a tank that's worth like $60 million. And of course, Israeli soldiers and Israeli mercenaries were killed in the process. When I say mercenaries, there were mercenaries from the US, including Israeli military special forces in Gaza, from France, from Italy, from many, many countries, Belgium, Australia, India even. These are people who joined the Israelis in the assault on the Gaza Strip. So this was a remarkable ability to persist for almost 6 months now, with all these militaries combined. You know, Israel, of course, funded by the U.S., supported by the U.S. The U.S. gave Israel, you know, over $1 billion worth of bombs just in the past 6 months. To bomb Gaza. And so they bomb Gaza, but they're not bombing the resistance, they're bombing civilian places. And 70%, as you heard, of the residential buildings in Gaza were targeted. So Israel leveled Gaza, as they said they would, as I believe them when they say these things, as I said. So this is a picture on the lower left-hand corner of President Biden shaking hands with U.S. Servicemen who served in Gaza or went to Gaza. The State Department pulled this picture from their website after they realized its ramification if the American public knew that Americans were serving inside Gaza in military combat things. But anyway, the U.S. also supports these bombs, those F-35s, F-15s, F-16 airplanes, etc. The U.S. also knows very well what Israel intended to do in terms of genocide and ethnic cleansing. In fact, you know, New York Times, for example, is not a Palestinian-friendly newspaper, as you know, is owned by Zionists, but even in the New York Times, it says that Israeli leaders believed mass civilian casualties were an acceptable price in the military campaign, and in conversations with American counterparts, Israeli officials referred to how the United States and other allied powers resorted to devastating bombing in Germany and Japan during World War II, including the dropping of 2 atomic bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the largest terrorist action done historically, by the way, single bombings done so far. In fact, there were Israeli cabinet ministers who said we should just drop nuclear bombs on Gaza and get it over with. These are just parts of the names of the 31,560 Palestinian civilians who were killed so far. Actually, there's about 7,000 or 8,000 more who are missing under the rubble. They don't count them as dead yet because they don't know for sure what happened to them. But we're talking then, if you add those, about 38,000 in total Palestinian civilians killed. This is an average. If you divide it by the days since October 7, that would be about 120 to 150 Palestinian civilians killed daily. Half of them are children, 70% are actually children and women. For example, the Hassouna family, here you can see on the right side, they enlarged it. From age 1 year to age 15 years, all these people are dead. Israeli commanders and soldiers are not shy about proudly admitting that they are killing children, etc. So this is the kind of scenes that we see, horrific scenes that are unbelievable. And there's a lot of videos, and I won't go through this because I'm also in a bad mood now already. But these are people. Each one of those numbers, when I say 38,000 people, each one is a person, is a number. This is For example, the violinist who was killed, this girl, Sana Al-Farra, was killed. This girl and her brother were killed. Her younger brother survived. This guy was killed with his family. This medical doctor was killed. Each one of them, this is Bisan, Halasa. Of course, they have names, they have dreams, they have, they have memories. I mean, this woman who was killed also is. She did an interview a few days before she was killed. She said, "I'm older than the state of Israel that's attacking us." And then she proceeded to tell them about the cultural heritage of the village she comes from, which happens to be one of the areas that Israel took over and changed into a kibbutz near Gaza. There are 17,000 orphans in Gaza now, new orphans basically. Luckily, I should say not luckily, but the killing of whole families means this number could have been higher if it was selective killing, but they were killing whole families, father, mother, children, grandparents, etc. So these orphans, how are they going to live in Gaza and how are they going to survive is something we need to talk about. There was the attack on the hospitals, which you heard about, and and Israel seems to get away with just about everything. They attacked the first hospital, and then when some people raised their eyebrows and started complaining, Israel said, well, it was an errant missile from Palestinians that attacked this Al-Ahli hospital. But, forensic evidence is very clear. There was Israeli bombing from the air on that hospital. But even, assuming that this was an excuse for one hospital, what about the 36 hospitals and clinics that were targeted intentionally by airplanes afterwards, leaving the Gaza healthcare system non-existent, basically? And so now, with 73 or 75,000, I think the last number, injured Gazans pulled from the rubble or shrapnel or things like that, a lot of them will die. Estimates are between 30 to 40 some percent will die because of lack of medical facilities. But Israel is also not just targeting hospitals, targeting cultural centers, mosques. Over 200 mosques and 3 churches were destroyed. Targeting universities. These are just some universities that were targeted. You can see the picture on the upper right-hand corner, before and below it, the picture after. This is Al-Quds Open University, etc. The people of Gaza are, of course, resilient and try to do their best, but this is an ongoing genocide. Even as I speak to you, there are people being killed. The people of the first responders, I really sympathize with them. Many of them were killed. The picture on the left is a group of first responders proud of saving a child. This is in the beginning, in the first 2 weeks of the onslaught on Gaza. Now you won't see them smiling like this about one baby that they saved, because they are barely catching up, and half those people in the picture you see on the left side, they're already gone themselves, killed themselves. This is an ongoing thing, as I said, from 1948. Attacks on the press, for example, is also more than 10% or 15% of the journalists in Gaza were killed. That's higher percentage than, of course, number of regular people killed, civilians, and or injured or arrested, like this two husband and wife journalists who we still don't know where they are. By the way, was kidnapped by the Israeli soldiers. Israel kidnapped thousands of Palestinians, both in the West Bank and Gaza. So people try to survive, try to manage, even try to have fun. This is a photographer, that I discovered was taking a lot of nice photographs. He was so proud, this picture, when he and a few kids found the tent, finally got a tent donated so they don't have to live under the rain and cold weather. This is in an UNRWA school where people are all over each other in the classrooms and in the yard of the school. These are some pictures that same person, Thabit, took in the refugee camps, in the tent camps, and what they are living and how they are living. He has amazing photographs. This is also his photograph of basically some two people entertaining the kids as clowns. So bottom line is, what do we want? What we want is an end to this nightmare immediately, of course. And you guys have been calling for ceasefire, and around the world have been calling for ceasefire, hundreds of millions of people. But we call more than for a ceasefire. We call to the end of the world's largest concentration camp. We call for the removal of every colonial settler in the West Bank. We call for the right of return. We call for a just resolution to the governance of the lands of Israel and Palestine. We call for prosecution of war crimes, for ethnic cleansing, taking land by war, transfer of population, collective management, etc. The people are with us, the Western people are with us, because the Zionist lobby cannot go around and buy hundreds of millions of people. They can buy politicians, they can buy the media, they can bribe politicians like Edelstein, or what's his name, who was bribing politicians by photographing them or videotaping them with children and with underage girls having sex. And so the Zionist movement has videos on most politicians in the world, including, in my humble opinion, both Trump and Biden. That's why both are Zionists. Not because they bribe them with money, because they blackmail them with videotapes. So that's why you see, for example, this is from the Greek capital, where you see the Israeli flag on the Greek, what do you call it? the parliament, and then in the front of the same parliament, the Greek people coming out to demonstrate for Palestine. This is in London, hundreds of thousands in Yemen, millions of people in all Yemen cities. Basically, Jews of conscience, religious Jews, secular Jews have stood up and said the problem is Zionism and it's time for us to get this changed. And we can expand our boycott, divestment, sanctions. Now I want to just say a few words about, of course, you know about our museum and what it does, but I do want to, this is what the museum looks like. This is some of our situation in the West Bank. I just want to say a few words about that. The picture on the upper right is of Bethlehem, Christmas the year before, and Christmas this past Christmas below it. Obviously, we didn't have tourists, we didn't have local tourists even. Bethlehem was locked up. just like most Palestinian cities, was locked up. So we had a horrible situation in Bethlehem. There are so many needy people in Bethlehem because there's high unemployment now, some 60, 70% unemployment now, which is 3 times what it used to be in the Great Depression in the US, by the way. Anyways, this is Christmas. We put even rubble in front of the Church of Nativity because Jesus, as you know, the Herod killed the babies in Bethlehem to try and get to Jesus. So we even had an incubator with a model of Jesus inside it in front of the Church of Nativity. But of course, as I said, not many people were there. And the situation was really bad. This I like this picture. I don't know who made it, who put them together, but this is Mother Mary and Jesus, and then a woman from Gaza and her child. So those two brother and sister looking up to the sky, for bombs or whatever, or for salvation or hope. I don't think it's gonna come from above or from below, other than death and destruction. And I will end by reiterating why I said in the beginning that we have or the title of the lecture also is that genocide here is different, and it's different in that it has global ramifications. It's now, I don't know if you heard, just 10 days ago there were, or a few days ago, there were maneuvers of Russian Navy with Chinese Navy with Iranian Navy in several oceans. And this was, expected. The US, of course, conducts its own naval exercises with its allies, including Israel and United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, etc. We are starting a regional war already, and it's going to spread to a global war. I wish I could tell you the chance of that is small. It could be as much as 60, 70%. That's going to be horrible for everybody. If I say 60 or 70%, what's the other 30 or 40%? When Dean said I'm prophetic, you don't have to be prophetic if you study history, you see what's going on. The other option 2, if you want, the 30 or 40%, I mentioned it at the first time I spoke at the community church in Boston, maybe 20 some years ago or more. When I said, we have those two roads to go. We can either go down the road of win-win and have a livable planet and be fair to everybody and share the resources on this planet. That's one option. Or we can continue down the option we were going before. But unlike before, by the way, now it's the end of the road. Basically, the lemmings have reached the cliff. And when we reach a cliff, it's the end of it for all of us, whether we're black lemmings or white lemmings or or Zionist lemmings or non-Zionist, anti-Zionist lemmings. We're gonna go down the drain, all of us. That choice is still there. Some of us work to avoid that choice, to avoid that dreaded, right-wing ideas that are taking us to this global war. Or we can sober up and get serious about changing the course. It's not going to be easy, and as I said, I wish I could say we will succeed. As a scientist, I say probability that we will succeed is 40% at best. So I'll stop here and I'm happy to take any questions or comments you have. Or did everybody fall asleep? Because
Thank you, Mazen. One of those images you showed me reminded me of something that we have in the auditorium. I hope you can see it. It's behind us. It is almost Easter time when we commemorate death and resurrection, commemorate death and celebrate resurrection. And we always put out on our sidewalk this image, which is by Katie Miranda El Al, and it has a Pietà with Jesus with the keffiyeh and Mary with the hijab. This is just a striking image that we cannot forget. Of course, underneath that is something that Dan Kantoff brought us. It's a tribute to Aaron Bushnell, who you know took his own life to make a statement about Palestine. The other thing I wanted to tell you, Mazen, is that Larry Wilkerson turned us on to a really interesting event that just by coincidence, it's an international Zoom event, and it starts right now at noon on Sundays, and it's the acronym is IPC, and it's called Israel Palestine something or other, and it's basically a mock court or tribunal that is putting together a scenario for an Israel-Palestine federation to govern the region. And
that's Joseph Havasar. He has these events almost weekly.
Are you familiar with that, Mazen?
Yeah. He has these events almost weekly.
Yes.
Joseph Havasar, he is thinking of confederation. He's thinking of the best ways to save Zionism.
Yeah. I had not heard of it, and it struck me as a ray of hope, and we're hoping maybe Sunday to join.
No, it's not dead.
No, it's not. Okay. Thank you, Mazen. And we'll find a different ray of hope, right? But in the meantime, this song, followed by a Q&A. We have put in the chat the information where you can donate to the Palestine Museum of Natural History through the Bethlehem University. There's a street address as well as the website. Man of anger, man of war, my heart is filled with love. Tell me what you are fighting for. My heart is filled with love. This death I see won't make me numb. My heart is filled with love. Every boy a mother's son. My heart is filled with love. Raise your voices, spread the news. My heart is filled with love. Christian, Muslim, Jew, my heart is filled with love. They all teach the golden rule. My heart is filled with love. Do unto others as you'd have them do. My heart is filled with love. I will not fear these foreign tongues. My heart is filled with love. There is a place for everyone. heart is filled with love. I cannot make their will my own. My heart is filled with love. Fear can turn a heart to stone. My heart is filled with love. I do not know my neighbor's name. My heart is filled with love. I love that stranger just the same. My heart is filled with love. Hope is rising from this place. My heart is filled with love. Divine wisdom, amazing grace. My heart is filled with love. Men of anger, men of war, my heart is filled with love. Tell me what you are fighting for. My heart is filled with love. My heart is filled with love. My heart is filled with love. Thank you very much. Now, a Q&A with Mazen before we enjoy our lunch that Luis Guzman has prepared for us. Alin, I see your hand up. While I get the cordless, would you like to come right up here?
Professor Mazin, thank you so much for your words. I was thinking about one of the subjects that is not very mentioned in our area, which is the right of defense of the Palestinian people. And one of the questions I want to ask you is, before October 7, in the previous months, let's say 3 months before October 7, how many Palestinians were killed by the army, the Israeli army? On the other hand, you're right, the world masses understand that is what is taking place in Palestine is a genocide. I praise the people of Ireland, the masses of Ireland. Today they are celebrating St. Patrick's Day here in Boston. As a Latino American, I see in Central America, in South America, more consciousness and more mobilization. And as Vice President of this community, we're doing our best to advance that. But I will be very frank with you. I think what Hamas did in October 7th was justified. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, I will answer that. And also, I want to answer some of the questions in the chat room. There are some really good questions in the chat. In terms of number of Palestinians who were killed, there's some echo in there. I don't know why, if you hear it, but I hear it. Anyway, in terms of the number of Palestinians killed, they were killed in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip almost daily throughout, January, February, March, April, etc., to September. And to even the day before October 7, there were a Palestinian child who was, actually 2 brothers who were killed in the West Bank. So, and Israel had been intensifying its attacks on the holy sites, like Al-Aqsa Mosque, etc. Now, what happened on October 7 is similar to what happened in the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. The people of the ghetto got armed and attacked the people who were surrounding them. We don't know exactly what happened on October 7 because there's a lot of media blackout on it. For example, there's now leaked evidence, including videotape, that Israeli military targets their own civilians, and the Hannibal doctrine of October 7 to prevent and even soldiers prevent them from being kidnapped by Hamas. Hamas was intended to just take a lot of prisoners so that they can trade them for the Palestinian captives. And at the time, 7 October, there were 7,000 Palestinian captives. Now we know of at least 10,000 and maybe a couple or 3,000 more from Gaza. We don't know because those we don't have data on. So the atrocities were happening, the settlements were happening, the ethnic cleansing and the killings of Palestinian civilians was happening before October 7, as I said, even going back to 1948. Now, I do want to address some of the other questions. And as far as South America, Latin America, by the way, I'm going to go there in November and December. In next month, in April, we're going to Australia and New Zealand, where we have a packed program of over 75 talks in Australia and New Zealand. But if you know people, please connect us to those. In Latin America, November and December, over 6 weeks, I want to visit at least 4 countries because it's important. And as you point out, the world is changing, so we need to capitalize on this. Sorry to use that terminology, but to build on it. Now, in terms of our own institute, it's called the Palestine Institute of Biodiversity and Sustainability, not just the Museum of Natural History. Museum of Natural History is a small part of it. We have a botanic garden, we have educational programs, we have research departments, we have a community service department where we help people. So that's why we need the support if you want to donate. And I put the link for the donation. To do it in the right way is look for my message with the link, basically at PalestineNature.org under donations. There was a question in the chat about, from somebody named YH about the IPC, Israel-Palestine Confederation. You know, it's an interesting idea to think of confederations. But if confederations basically strengthen the status quo of Palestinians now having access to only 8.3% of the land that we are allowed to live in, and increasingly shrinking with the buffer zone around Gaza and the cutting of Gaza into North Gaza and South Gaza, with the 7-kilometer Israeli road that took up, destroyed buildings, etc., took up land from the Palestinians, is probably now close to 8% of the land. If you're talking about a confederation, which is, I think, what the intention is, that a confederation where a few Palestinians remain on 8% of the land, and 92% of the land is for the Jewish state, living with a Palestinian state on 8% of the land, and call it a confederation, and without the right of refugees to return, and without even sovereignty on the 8% of the land, then this is not a good starting point, so to speak. It's not an issue of having votes of Palestinians counted in the Palestinian state and votes of the Israelis counted in the Israeli state. It's an issue of justice. It's an issue of decolonization. So if Joseph Habessar and others agree to the right of refugees to return and decolonize, it's important to use that terminology, decolonize, then I am for it. But if they don't agree to that, then I don't want to have anything to do with it. So let's see, maybe take another question from the audience over there.
If there is no one else, I'd like to ask you, Mazen, about the situation for Christians in the West Bank. I've heard, I haven't researched it, but that it's a shrinking population and just in very difficult circumstances given the occupation.
Yeah, before I do that and before I forget, I do want to add also that there's a website I highly recommend, which has a lot of information on what's going on now, called ongaza.org. I'll also put in the chat ongaza.org. It has information about October 7, it has information about situation before October 7, it has information about the situations in the West Bank. Now, in terms of the situation of Christians, I mean, Israel has been very good in propaganda efforts, as you know, including trying to suppress the fact that they were targeting Christians here, that the Israeli regime targets Christians in Jerusalem, in the West Bank, in Gaza. In Gaza, I mentioned 3 churches that were bombed. In one incident, they bombed the yard of not the yard, but the supplementary building next to the church that was housing Christian refugees, Christians who were displaced from their homes and thought it's safe to live in the church building. And they killed whole families of those Christians. 2 of them are friends of mine. I knew them from before. The same thing in the West Bank and in Jerusalem. Christians are under attack by the colonial regime. Of course, you know, when you think of the numbers, we are small as a percentage of the population, so the percentage of casualties among us is the same as the percentage of casualties among the Muslims, but we get killed in the same proportion, if you want. There are, you know, many Palestinians who were kidnapped, Palestinian Christians who were kidnapped. Many were tortured in jail. Many were shot and killed, including children. Many were arrested and tortured and stuff like that. So the situation is not nice. And now, you know, even there's an attack in Jerusalem to make Jerusalem a Jewish city. There's, as we speak, an attack on the Armenians of Jerusalem, because the Armenians, there's a quarter of the old city of Jerusalem is Armenian quarter, and they want this out. They want the Armenian Palestinians out. So there's a same kind of atrocities that happen to us Christians as happen to fellow Muslims.
Another question from Alin.
Yeah. Yesterday, the rector, the president of the University of Costa Rica, my home country, refused to meet the Israeli ambassador on the grounds of denouncing the genocide. This is something really important because the University of Costa Rica is the most important university in the nation. It holds more than 40,000 students. So I was wondering if you will consider, when you visit Latin America, to visit Costa Rica with an invitation of the president of the University of Costa Rica.
I would love to. Please connect me, and I can send you the brief biography and other information. And there was a question in the chat, which countries are we going to? Basically, it's still open now. So far, I have confirmations from Paraguay, Chile, and Argentina. And I'm considering Cuba. I have a couple of friends, and I have, but I cannot do everything, of course. So we'll see what invitations materialize in the next few months, and then we'll have a schedule. Now, there was a question about what's happening in Rafah. I'm glad you asked about this question because this is the part I didn't discuss. It's really important, very, very important to understand what's going on. How could the US, for example, be supplying bombs that kill civilians, and for every 2,000 kilograms of bombs that they supported, they dropped 1 kilogram of expired food and medicine from airplanes. And now they are opening a so-called marine corridor from Cyprus to Gaza. This is all part of the scheme. You have to really understand. The US could stop the genocide with one phone call if they choose to. If Biden or his Secretary of State Blinken chooses to, one phone call would be enough to stop this genocide. The phone call would just be like Eisenhower did it in the 1950s when he called the Israeli Prime Minister and told him, I expect you to withdraw from the Sinai promptly. This is the word he used. And promptly was actually precisely 36 hours when all the Israeli forces withdrew from Sinai and Gaza Strip in 1956. Even when they were supported by Britain and France at the time, the Israelis were supported by Britain and France. So the US president or his Secretary of State could easily stop this genocide by a phone call to the Israeli Prime Minister, tell them, you start withdrawing your forces and you stop your genocide, and you have 36 hours to do it, or whatever, 2 days, 3 days to stop it, or we will stop supporting you. Stop supporting you. Israel cannot survive 1 day without US support. The US used the veto power at the UN to shield Israel from international law 3 times already in the past 3 months. The US use of threat to veto even, but more importantly, of course, the use of US weapons, which Israel cannot survive without the US weapons, or without the salvation of Israel by US puppets like United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia and Jordan. I don't know if you know or not, but the US got these 3 countries to make a land corridor from the United Arab Emirates to Saudi Arabia, to Jordan, to Israel, to provide Israel with all its needs from Asia, from China, from India, from all of these things, food, everything. That's these Arab countries were participating, and the reason they were participating in saving Israel instead of saving Palestinians is because the US told them to do so. So again, Israel is fully dependent on the US, in every way, shape, or form. So the US clearly doesn't want a ceasefire, doesn't want this genocide to end, wants Israel to continue pummeling the Palestinian civilian population and finally ethnic cleansing it. And I suspect that this maritime corridor from Cyprus to Gaza will be actually mechanism to ethnically cleanse parts of Gaza and to also because Egypt refused to take Palestinians from Gaza. So Europeans may take them through this maritime corridor. Not about providing supplies or food for Gaza. All aid agencies, the UN and everybody else said this doesn't work. You have to have the land corridors open because when you take an airplane and dump some parachutes from it with food, the whole cargo of an airplane goes on one truck. And you need 1,000 trucks a day in Gaza just to prevent starvation. And certainly ships on the border. And there's already thousands of trucks on the Rafah border that are held by Israel, the US pressuring Egypt not to allow them in without Israeli approval. So it's another scheme of control of Gaza that they are planning. And also it's to throw dust in the eyes of the American public before the election so that Biden can say, hey, see, we are helping Palestinians. We're dropping bombs on them in one hand and we are giving them a few packages of food on the other.
Another question, Mazen.
I see David Berg and Charlie Welch online.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. Yes.
Maybe Charlie, you can start.
Yes. Hi, thanks. You talked a little bit about the a substitute for the Belt and Road Initiative, and could you say a little bit more about that? It looked like you were talking just about a pipeline, and that's only a small percentage of what.
No, yeah, this is very important. I mean, Israel is already, thinking of bringing, billions of dollars from Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates. Not so much money from Jordan. Jordan is a poor country, but this will be railroads, highways, trains, whatever. Even they were thinking about. It's still on the books now. They have the maps for it of an alternative Suez Canal that will go from the Gulf of Aqaba, Eilat, to Gaza, to the Mediterranean coast. So you can have ships coming to Aqaba, Eilat, and download their cargo or continue their road actually to the Mediterranean, continue to Europe, because the Suez Canal brings Egypt about $6 billion a year. So this would replace the need for Egypt in this equation, if you want. And Gaza is in the way, as I said, Gaza is the biggest obstacle in the way, and the resistance in Gaza is a big obstacle in the way. So this is a big corridor similar to the Belt and Road Initiative that China built through Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iran, Turkey to Europe, etc. So let's see, David. Yeah, I'll get you, Kevin, but let's take David first. David, unmute, please.
Hi, Mazen and Jesse. Greetings from the Netherlands. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys in April. The Vietnamese people had a national liberation movement. The Algerian people had a national liberation movement. Black South Africans had a national liberation movement. The Nicaraguans had a national liberation movement that went astray. Do the Palestinian people have a national liberation movement?
At this point, we have fragmented leadership and idiotic leadership in many ways. and I'm talking about just about every one of the 12 factions that are there, including Fatah and Hamas and Popular Front and Islamic Jihad. They are not rising to the challenge of the moment, and I don't want to go into details on this because I'm already depressed and I don't want to depress myself some more. So what can I tell you? I mean, it's national liberation movements are not necessarily this uniform body that makes a decision. In South Africa, there were 32 factions and they were fighting with each other and they were not happy with each other. But there was a global movement that helped them, and we need the global movement that help us just like they did with South Africa. And of course, the Zionists and the US are working to fragment us even more. And so that's natural, divide and conquer kind of thing. We have to be aware. We're working on it. I'm working on it. Many others, hundreds of Palestinian intellectuals and academics are working on this. So it is going to materialize. I'm most optimistic about the young generations of Palestinians who are not encumbered by the stupidities of Yasser Arafat or Mahmoud Abbas or the other elders, if you want. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something about the notion of a settler state, and I was going to give three examples, but one that I remember is I had been in conversation with some Republican supporters in Ireland, and they wanted to. I remember seeing an image of. It was in Belfast, and in Northern Ireland, in Ulster, and there was a flag that was given up in support of the Palestinian struggle, and they realized what was going on in Gaza and in the West Bank, and because it came together with the notion of unity with Ireland to create it, because we never did achieve that goal in 1920 or in 1922 with the Anglo-Irish Agreement. Yeah, right. So they're separate. The North is still part of England or the United Kingdom, and we have the Republic in the South. Okay, with it's separate from them, but they're still connected with other imperialist powers, i.e., the United States. There's a connection with that. It has to do with ethnicity. Joe Biden, the president of the United States, he's of Irish descent. He has a connection with the Irish, and I'm sure the Republic feels the same way. They play that political way. But in terms of struggle and unity with the North, with the Republic, with Ireland itself, and in the Middle East, and in other areas where there are settler states, we're still going on with that struggle. The horrors of Israel Palestine is a horror. The horrors that had existed in Sri Lanka, in formerly known as British Ceylon, between the Tamil people, the Hindu Tamils, and the Sinhalese Buddhists. There had been a war going on with them. I don't know if it's still going on, but it's still out. I think it's still out there. I don't know if there's a peace treaty there. So basically, those are the three examples I've just mentioned between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, or Britain and Northern Ireland. There is another. I just want to finish one little part. I did mention that there was a flag of solidarity between the Republican movement and the Palestinian struggle. Okay, but also you could see there's a sign of unity. This notion of the unity between United Kingdom and the Republic, not the Republican movement, but the Protestant side in Northern Ireland, the Democratic Unionists, they call themselves. So they would have a symbol, their flag. They would have the British flag, and then they would have the Israeli flag. So they're connected. They're all connected. That's my point. I just want to make that there's a connection between the settlers in many different parts of the world. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps one aspect that's positive that we can draw hope from is that decolonization, anti-colonial struggles existed in just about every country. In fact, I cannot even think of a country that escaped from being colonizers or colonized, and sometimes both, like Spain was colonized by the Moors and then became the largest colonizing country on earth. So we have a lot of examples to draw on, a lot of history to draw on, and post-colonial studies are now entering, mainstream discourse around universities around the world. And we can certainly benefit from these comparative studies. In fact, I do some of this in my own research now, and I encourage any of you interested in research to do this. For example, do comparative issues of relationship or genocides to colonialism and how it was done in other parts of the world. For example, in Australia, with the Aborigines or North American, Native Americans, etc., how these genocides started, how they ended up, what's the philosophy behind them, and how they could be, struggled against, how we could decolonize. There's a lot of work to be done, in my humble opinion, on comparative studies. Okay.
Thank you.
How much longer do you guys want to go? Another 15 minutes, or is this enough?
We could go on for 3 hours with you, Mazen. It's really just amazing to be with you. But at some point, the aroma of lunch starts wafting through the auditorium, and
let me just take one question from Ellen, raised her hand.
Sure, Ellen. Ellen, are you there?
All right, there I am. Okay. No,
Hello,
I put, can you hear?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, no, in the chat, I just wanted to know, because I've been watching these millions of Yemenis have these demonstrations. They really seem like they're ready to go, besides what they're doing in the Red Sea and towards the Indian Ocean issue. I'm just wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about whether there's any hope that the surrounding neighbors are going to intervene beyond what we've seen with Hezbollah and Yemeni. Is there any, what's going on there, in your opinion, will happen with these, besides the ones you say are not going to do anything, the three large Arab configurations, the Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Jordan? You say they're not going to do much, but please tell us about this.
I'm optimistic that we will see significant changes in the surrounding countries soon. I think Lebanon and Hezbollah has been very helpful. I think Yemen certainly has disrupted trade with Israel to a point where it devastated the Israeli economy and also forced the US and Britain and a couple of other countries to send their fleets to try and bomb Yemen into submission to help Israel continue its genocide. I think these are things that are positive. I think the fact that China is not putting up, being quiet about what's going on. China is saying there's genocide going on. South Africa is saying there's genocide going on. There's many countries that went into the ICJ. The problem is most people also realize that the UN needs to change. It cannot continue to be a hostage to the veto power of the US, you know. So people are wanting to change the UN to be more democratic. And I think that could happen also. This might be an opportunity to make a fairer world and, reform the UN to become more user-friendly, if you want, and to obey its own laws, basically. The UN violated, actually, its own charter. The first time they violated their own charter in the UN was 1947, when they decided to divide Palestine instead of follow their charter, which says people have a right to self-determination. So Palestinians, Jews, Christians, Muslims living here have a right to determine. They could have done a plebiscite, and they could have seen that most people wanted one state for all its people, and could have avoided all these subsequent wars and billions and trillions of dollars spent. The US spent nearly half its, more than half of its deficit, which is, or its debt now is, 30 trillion? More than half of this is due to wars in the Middle East that the US is doing on behalf of Israel. So anyways, things are changing around us. We need to pay attention how these impact us, and we need to promote positive changes, which means we have to stand against US imperialism and Zionism, racism. These are things we have to stand against and we have to push for. And then, David says truth and reconciliation process. Yes, after we decolonize, just like South Africa, after we end apartheid, we would get a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We would declassify all the documents that Israel has about the massacres they committed in 1948, about the use of chemical and biological weapons they used in 1948, about their nuclear arsenal. All of these things we can get at some point. I am supposed to actually give a talk in about a couple of hours on the issues of water and stuff like that. We're seeing a film about water injustice. If any of you want to attend that, I could send you the link. Just send me an email message. Again, you can send me the email at info@palestinenature.org. I give talks almost daily, 2 or 3 talks these days. And that's probably also why my voice goes away.
Mazen, I would like to thank you so much for including us in your busy schedule of so many talks and presentations. We are so honored. I'm not in my right place, but
it's okay.
Here we go. Just one last reminder to folks, next weekend, Saturday evening, Muslims for Progressive Values is celebrating an iftar for the end of Ramadan, Eid. Sunday, that's a week from today, Professor Gerald Horn, and music by the duo Magpie. Sunday in the afternoon, a commemoration of the assassination of Monsignor Oscar Romero from El Salvador. Lots of Salvadorans and lots of pupusas, which is the delicacy of the country of El Salvador. Many more events coming up. I hope you will join us again. Mazen, we thank you so much. We wish you could be here to enjoy lunch with us and be in further conversation, but we'll let you go to find some lozenges and get ready for your next presentation. We admire you. And
anybody can email me, and I'll add you to my email list so that you stay informed. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and take care, and keep abreast of all kinds of great things going on here at Community Church. We love you. Have a good week. Make progress. Make good